Bonjour, painters and decorators of the interweb. It's Phil Beckwith. You know who I am. I just want to talk about. I don't want to do another 20-minute. I can't even say it. I don't want to do another 20-minute video. I just want to really roughly recap on a papering job I'm on at the moment and try and do it in a few minutes so we can do a short YouTube video. Because this is another feature wall. I've got a run on feature walls at the moment. You've probably seen a few days ago feature walls being done. Now I'm on another one, straightforward. It's a standard width, 21-22 inch wide, which is your 525-30 width, standard width, but it's half drop, and the half drop 64 centimeters, so half that, and that's where your pattern comes through. It goes on an angle when you look at it. Now there's not a predominant pattern to it, but I'll come on to that in a minute. Let's talk about this corner. Right, so let's have 15 seconds intro and then let's talk about this corner, then I'll come on about this page. Right, I want to talk about this paper, but let's talk about this corner first. Now, I've come all the way along this wall, and you'll see the pole that I've got for my laser liner. I've come all the way down this wall. It's not paste the wall, it's paste the paper. Not done them for a bit, have I? Paste the paper. So it's paste the paper, no problem. 10 to 15 minutes soak. So anybody who's new to papering, when it says 10 to 15 minutes soak, what I do, I paste it, and I paste it by brush. It's tub paste. I'm using Wicks paste again, straight out the tin, straight out the tub. I've not thinned it, and I've brushed it on. Got a nice 4-inch brush, and I can apply that nicely, that I know the consistency of the paint. Well, the consistency of the paste that's going on. So if you've got a roller and you like using a roller, use a roller. If you've got a pasting machine, use a pasting machine. My only apprehension is with the pasting machine is getting enough on. You don't want too much on, too much not on. So that's by the by. We've pasted the paper and we've got it on. Now I've come up to an internal angle now, and I know I've spoke about internal angles before. Now I just wanted to recap. The edge of the paper, last length, is that one there. Now the width of the paper would go in there and then back out to there. That is virtually the width of the paper. But what you do is, and I've said before, if you're new to this, I'll just recap, measure 3 or 4 times from the last length into the angle and see what the distance is. Now I'm just going to roughly, it wasn't possibly this, from the edge of the paper to the corner I went from 10.5 inches to nearly 10.75 inches, so it fluctuated. So what I did, I allowed 5 mil, so another quarter, let's call it another 1/4 of an inch to make it easier. So I allowed another 1/4 of a mil. Now I got that length, this piece here, cut, allowing that extra overlap. Now I cut it so when it goes into the corner it overlaps by 1/4 of an inch, but it isn't 1/4 of an inch because that angle runs out. So in some areas it'll be just about right, and then other areas it's a little bit off. So what do you do, Phil, in that situation? Well, you just get your blade, make sure it's sharp, snap off blade, snap it off, have a sharp one, and I find that the thickness of the actual, well, it's not sponsored by Ovla, but the thickness of that, if you put that up against the wall edge that you're working with and go from top to bottom, that will keep you roughly about that 1/4 of an inch overlap all the way around. And you're going to say, Phil, you've lost me. Well, thankfully for you, I have the offcut. So I'm going to show you the offcut. Now the offcut, if you can see this is what I was trimming off to keep an overlap top to bottom equal 1/4 of an inch. And you see the laser liner? How good are laser liners? At the top, I was that distance. And as I went down the wall, trimming it, can you see? Don't keep looking at me. Can you see how that narrowing, and that's going narrower and narrower and narrower to virtually nothing that was at the bottom. So at the bottom, the overlap was 1/4 and whatever that is, if you can see that. But when I was at the top, it was that quarter overlap that I want, and it was as good as that at the top. So once that was trimmed off, I got my spatula. I'm only telling you what you probably already know, but people who are new to this might want to know how to do an internal angle. So that length went on, quarter of an inch, and I got my spatula, got it all the way in nicely. Now the offcut was the piece that's there. That goes from that corner to there. Now you can see with my laser liner, let me wobble it about. If I put that over the lens, can you see laser liner even more? Can you see it wobbling about? Yeah, you see it at the top. If I move my arm and body, you'll see it even more. There you go. That's what I see when I've got these glasses on, particularly when you've got a light room. It's by the by. Right. I measured it to make sure I was going to be in the right position, i.e. there to there, because the width of the paper, whatever it is, let's just have a check. I'll do it in inches because it's bigger numbers. 10 call it 10 1/4 inches. That piece that I cut off was 10 1/4 inches. So I marked it up, measured it 10 1/4 to see how the edge was running out. It wasn't too bad. So what I've done, I've actually offered it up at the top, got it hung at the top. Let's see if I can just angle you back there. I'll see if I can loosen you. I got it up at the top. Yeah, let's do it there. I got it up at the top and hung it as it was. Start to bring it down into the angle, keeping it 10 1/4 inches, not moving it. Then I got the laser liner to follow that line. And do you know what? That angle was then spot on. The only thing I had to trim off was at the bottom, and it was a little slither as long as that and as wide as that, next to nothing. So I just marked it with a pencil, pulled it away from the wall and just trimmed it off, and literally it was a little piece. So that angle there, oh, my laser's just moved off because I've moved it. That angle there, that edge, I should say not angle, that edge there, top to bottom is plumb, and I've got my laser liner on it, which is just here. Now the other advantage of using that laser liner, because I can get the verticals and I can get the horizontals. Now because this was a cut piece, I needed to make sure that visually, if you could see a pattern match, I can actually use the horizontal level, which I did do, because there is, you can't see it, it's a bit, I'll show you when I take you off camera. There is a definite pattern that I could see that I could follow round. Now with this being half drop, it wasn't the length next to it that I needed to match to, it was the previous length. So if I could get the laser liner, which I could do, lined up with the previous length of wallpaper, so 2 back, I could actually follow the pattern round. Now that, if I take that little piece there, I follow that round and it matched up to this piece here, and this was the length I was working from with my laser liner on the horizontal. So does that make sense? Give some comments if that doesn't make sense. I'm trying to explain that when you go into a corner, overlap it 1/4. If it overlaps more, just make sure you still got your 1/4 and trim it back like I've showed you with the piece that went from width all the way down to a narrow piece. And then the piece that you're putting on, which is your offcut, make sure that is plumbed up. I know a lot of people say, oh, just bang it on. Don't do that, because if you've got a longer wall to then carry on with, it can start running out. Laser liner or even a plumb bob, if you can manage with a plumb bob, and I'll say if you're managing with plumb bobs in this day and age, stick with it. But a laser liner, I can keep this on, can see where it is. My next one will be, what have I got? Let's have a look. Bit of a nasty one. I've got 1.5 inches from the edge of the paper to the corner. Now I'd normally, if it was a longer return, because it's only going into that angle there, if it was a longer run of wall, I would normally take that round, overlap it a fraction, cut it and then rehang. Now with this one, because it's only a small return that I'm doing, I'm going to get that on and manipulate it, get me sponge, get me warm sponge, work from the middle, go to the top, work to the bottom and get it round in one. I don't like doing it, but I think that's going to be better than trying to get a cut edge. And it's not splicing. When people say splicing, I don't do splicing. Splicing is getting two pieces, overlapping it, cutting it through, pulling off the backing, pulling off the face, and then putting them together. That to me is splicing. When I do a corner, an external corner, on a big run, if it was going around a wall, I would overlap it round, obviously trim the paper to size, but allow a 1/4 of an inch overlap to go around that corner. A 1/4 of an inch overlap around that corner, get it down nicely, and then put your next piece on, which is your offcut, on top of that overlap and plumb it all up. And it only has to be a slight 1/4 of an inch, and that way visually it looks better, because if you're looking straight onto it, it'll look matching. If you look on from that side, it'll look matching. Don't try and splice and not get the pattern matching. So that's up to you. I'm only telling you how I do it. Now, what I wanted to talk to you about just a bit earlier with this paper, I'll just take you off camera on this. Now, this is a heavyweight vinyl, and it's actually quite nice to hang. But when I was hanging it, you're probably not going to see it, I was noticing where the joints are, and the joints are lovely, it's good for joints. I was noting on the left hand side, and your professional painters and decorators and paper hangers will know what I'm saying. If you're a DIY, you're learning something. The left hand side of the paper is slightly more polished than the right side. So when I'm hanging and I'm looking at it, it looks like a polished edge. It's not a polished edge because I've not polished it. And if you got polished edges, that would be on both sides. But this paper is on the left hand side slightly more shiny stroke metallic-y. It's not polished, it's just the patterning. But depending on the light and how you look at it, and I'm going to come back, if you look at it square on like we are now, you don't notice it. If you look at it on a bit of an angle, you probably won't see it here, with the sunshine coming through, you can see that bit of a shiny edge on the left hand side of the paper. Now, it's all the way along, every one. But if I stand in the other side of the room, I don't see it. But to me, because I'm quite critical, I go into pubs, clubs, hotels, anybody else is decorating, I'm looking at it like you'd probably look at mine, or probably not look at mine. But I could just see on the joints, I can see it here, you're not going to see it. Oh, you can. Let's just go to that one there. Can you just see a faint band because I'm catching the light across it? And that's what I'm seeing when I come in, but only on certain angles. Now, it's not a fault on the paper because it's on every roll and we've got 4 rolls on the go. So there's obviously something on that patterning of how it's printed that I don't want to say pattern heavy, and if you are into your papering, you'll understand what I mean by pattern heavy on one side. It's not pattern heavy on one side or pigmented, it's just a little bit shinier on the left hand side of the roll of wallpaper. And again, if you're a professional painter and decorator that's doing papering, you'll know what I mean. If I say blown vinyls, you know, when they shrink wrap them, you'll probably find that the first foot of the roll of a blown vinyl, super fresco, the pattern all the way across the blown vinyl part seems flattened, and we always seem to cut off a good foot, don't we, until we get it all nice and springy. It's a little bit like that. I can just see it depending on what angle I'm on. So yeah, not a design fault, it's not a fault with the paper, it's just how the paper is produced. So other than that, I'm going to come and give you a decent wide angle shot of that. This is the wall. It's pretty nice, it's like a leather effect. It's nice to hang, looks effective. There's a stand here. There's a stand here, I don't see it. It depends on what angles I'm on. But am I being a bit overcritical? So tell me, am I being overcritical or not? Thanks for that. What are we? 15 minutes, if that. So just to talk you this job, I'm just going to finish that off now, wrap it around the corner and get it in. It's only part of a length that I'll be putting in. Dead easy, straightforward. Another nice morning's work. Cheerio, see you on the next one. Comments.